Hey everyone. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Please smash that subscribe button and help our unveiled family reach our goal. Thanks to everyone who has already subscribed. We love you. Now to the video. I matched with her on Hinge at like 12:47 a.m. when my brain was already fried from scrolling. The app had that late night feel where everything feels fake but also kind of dangerous in a fun way. Her photos were normal, not influencer stuff, just clean smiles and group shots that looked like real friends. The prompt that got me was family first. She wrote it like it was a warning, not a cute trait. I remember thinking that was intense but also kind of refreshing. My family is messy but close enough, so I figured I could handle someone who cared about theirs. We talked for a few days and nothing felt off. She typed fast, sent voice notes sometimes, laughed at dumb stuff. She suggested we meet at a local diner that stayed open late, one of those places with sticky menus and a neon sign that buzzed like it was tired of existing. I agreed without thinking too hard. It felt normal. I even told my roommate I might be gone a while, joked about Hinge dates always being weird. I had no idea how right that would be. The night of the date I showed up early because I always do. The diner smelled like old coffee and grease that had soaked into the walls. I sat in a booth and kept checking my phone, pretending I wasn't nervous. When she walked in, she looked exactly like her photos, which already felt like a good sign. She smiled big, waved, slid into the booth like she had done it 1,000 times. Everything felt easy at first. I relaxed. We ordered food, talked about work, dumb internet stuff, nothing heavy. But then there were these little moments that didn't sit right. She kept glancing toward the entrance every few minutes. Not like she was waiting for someone else, more like she was checking the time without a watch. When I asked about her job, she gave a vague answer and quickly switched topics. She asked me a lot of questions though. Not just normal ones but deep ones that felt weird for a first date. Stuff about my parents' marriage, how I felt about faith even though I never brought it up, whether I saw myself settling down soon. I thought maybe she was just intense. Some people are like that. Halfway through the meal, right when my fries were getting cold, the door opened again. I didn't look up at first because it was just another customer. But she did. She straightened her back and smoothed her shirt like she was getting ready for a photo. That made me look. 3 people walked in together. An older man with a stiff posture, a woman holding a purse tight against her chest, and another man dressed too nice for a diner, like Sunday had followed him in. They didn't look around confused like first-timers. They walked straight to our booth. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I missed a step on stairs. The older man smiled at me in a way that felt practiced. The woman nodded politely. The third man just observed, eyes heavy, calm in a way that felt wrong. She didn't introduce them. She didn't even look surprised. She just shifted over, making space like this was planned seating. I sat there frozen, brain trying to catch up. The waitress came by, asked if we needed anything else, and she ordered coffees for all of them without asking. That was the moment I realized this wasn't random. The older man sat across from me and leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table. He studied me openly. Not rude exactly, just thorough like I was a product. The woman watched quietly, eyes moving between me and her daughter, like she was checking for something specific. The other man stayed silent, hands folded, gaze steady. The air felt thick. The diner noise faded like someone turned the volume down. She finally explained, casually like she was telling me the bathroom code. Her family took relationships seriously. Very seriously. They believed in being involved early. No wasted time. She said this date was important to them. She said family first again like that explained everything. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my ears. No one asked if this was okay with me. They just started observing. The older man asked questions, not directly but through comments. He mentioned how eye contact showed confidence. The woman talked about how posture mattered, how first impressions could say everything. The silent man wrote things down in a small notebook. That notebook messed me up the most. Every time he moved the pen, my skin crawled. I tried to act normal. I nodded, answered when questions came my way, laughed at the right moments. Inside, I was spiraling. I felt trapped in a booth with people who had already decided my role. The fries were untouched now. My coffee went cold. I noticed other diners glancing over, probably thinking it was just a family meal. No one saw how wrong it was. They asked about my live situation. I said I shared an apartment with a friend. The woman made a note about stability. They asked about my parents. Divorced, I said. The older man frowned slightly, then smiled again like he corrected himself. They asked about future plans. I talked about maybe going back to school. The silent man underlined something. I could hear the scratch of the pen even over the clatter of dishes. The worst part was her. She watched all of this like it was normal. Like she had been on this side of the table her whole life. Sometimes she would add details about me I hadn't said yet, like she was helping fill out a form. She corrected me once, lightly, when I downplayed something. I felt exposed, like my profile had expanded into my entire life without my consent. Time stretched. I don't know how long we sat there. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. I was afraid of what would happen if I tried to leave. Not that they would stop me physically, but there was this pressure, this expectation that I finish what they started. The older man talked about commitment. The silent man finally spoke, just once, saying consistency mattered. His voice was calm and flat. It stuck with me. Eventually, like it was scheduled, they wrapped up. The woman smiled warmly, thanked me for coming. The older man shook my hand, grip firm, eyes locked on mine. The silent man closed his notebook. She walked them to the door, hugged her mom, kissed her dad's cheek, then came back like we could just continue the date. I couldn't. I said I needed to go. I didn't explain. I grabbed my jacket, threw some cash on the table, more than enough to cover my meal and theirs. I didn't look back as I walked out. The night air felt sharp, like it was cutting through me. I sat in my car for a long time before driving. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Later that night, she texted me like nothing was wrong. Said they liked me. Said I had potential. Said we could talk about next steps soon. I didn't reply. I unmatched her. I deleted Hinge for a while. Every now and then I think about that notebook and wonder how many names are in it. I wonder if any of them stayed.
I almost didn't swipe right on him because his profile felt like a lecture. Every photo was clean and stiff, like he practiced smiling in a mirror. His prompts were all about purpose, intention, not wasting time. One of them said Hinge wasn't a game to him and that he was there for something real. Normally that stuff makes me scroll past, but it was late and I was bored, and something about how serious he sounded felt grounding. Like maybe this one wouldn't be messy. We matched and he messaged fast. Not flirty, more like structured. Good morning texts that came at the same time every day. Questions that felt like they came from a checklist. I didn't mind at first. It felt different. Safer maybe. He kept saying intentional dating like it was a rule he lived by. I figured that just meant he wanted commitment. I wasn't against that. We decided to meet at a quiet coffee place near a bookstore. It wasn't a diner or a bar, more like a soft place with plants and low music. I got there first and sat by the window, watching people pass by with tote bags and headphones. I remember thinking this felt calm. Like a reset from bad dates. I even texted my friend that this one felt promising, which is something I never do. He showed up right on time. He wore the same jacket from his photos, which made him feel real. He smiled, sat down, ordered his drink without looking at the menu. Again, very planned. We started talking and it was fine. Not exciting, but steady. He talked about routines, goals, how he didn't believe in casual dating. He kept saying intentional like it explained everything about him. About 10 minutes in, right when I was settling into the rhythm of it, his phone buzzed on the table. It was face up, which I noticed because I'm weird about that. The screen lit up and for a split second I thought I was imagining things. The notification banner had my Hinge profile photo. My exact photo. Same cropped smile, same background. My name too. My brain stalled. I stared at the phone like it was glitching reality. He noticed my face change and casually flipped the phone over, but it was too late. I had already seen it. My heart started racing, not in a nervous date way, but in a cold panic way. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked calm. He took a sip of his drink and then explained it like it was normal. He had made another Hinge account. Not just any fake account, but one pretending to be me. Same pictures, same prompts, same answers. He said it was to test loyalty. He said people lie online and this was the only way to know early. He said intentional dating required verification. I felt like the room tilted. I looked around to see if anyone else noticed how wrong this was. Everyone was just reading or typing or sipping coffee, completely unaware that my identity had been copied and was actively talking to strangers through his phone. He told me he had been messaging people as me, watching how they responded, seeing who I would attract. He said it gave him insight. I couldn't process it fast enough. I asked how he even got my photos. He said he saved them early on. He said it like that was smart. He told me he had sent messages to other guys using my account to see if I would engage. Then he smiled slightly and said I passed because I didn't reply. I realized then that the notification I saw was probably someone messaging fake me while I sat there across from him. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before. Like my face and words were being worn by someone else. I thought about my friends who might see that account. My coworkers. Anyone. He said he deleted it already, like that fixed everything. He said he needed to be sure before investing more time. Intentional. I tried to keep my composure. I didn't want to cause a scene. But inside my thoughts were tripping over each other. If he did this now, what else did he think was acceptable? He talked about trust while actively breaking it. He talked about honesty while running an entire test behind my back. The more he explained, the worse it got. He said he had done this before. Not always pretending to be the girl, sometimes pretending to be another guy to see how she reacted. He said it saved him months of uncertainty. He said people who had nothing to hide shouldn't mind. He watched my face closely, like my reaction was another data point. I noticed details that I had ignored earlier. The way he sat too still. The way he didn't fidget. The way his eyes tracked every movement I made. This wasn't about connection. This was about control. About turning dating into some kind of experiment where he got to hold all the cards. My coffee went untouched. The plant by the window cast a weird shadow across the table as the sun shifted. I kept thinking about my phone in my bag and how there might be messages on my real Hinge account from people confused by the fake one. I felt embarrassed even though I had done nothing wrong. I told him I was uncomfortable. He nodded like he expected that. He said discomfort was part of growth. That was the moment something in me snapped into clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was who he was. Someone who thought intent justified everything. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to move. I told him I was leaving. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched, calm as ever, like this outcome was already accounted for. I left the coffee shop and the air outside felt heavier than it should have. Like I was walking through something thick. I sat on a bench across the street and checked my phone. My Hinge account had a notification from earlier. Someone asking a question I never answered. I felt sick knowing that was probably him talking to someone else as me. I changed my password immediately. I reported a fake account. I deleted my photos for a while. It felt like the only way to get my face back. Later that night, he sent me a long message. He said he was disappointed. He said he thought I valued intentional dating too. He said trust went both ways and my reaction showed immaturity. I didn't reply. I blocked him. I still think about how easily he did it. How normal it felt to him. Sometimes when my phone buzzes now, I still get that flash of panic. Like my own name might pop up from somewhere it shouldn't be. Hinge feels different after that. Like the screen is thinner than I thought and anyone could reach through it if they wanted bad enough.
The weird part is I almost canceled because she wanted to meet near her office, and that always feels like a trap. Not in a dramatic way, just in a boring way where someone is half at work and half pretending to be present. But she said it was easier for her schedule and I didn't want to seem difficult, so I agreed. I told myself it was just coffee, daylight, normal stuff. Nothing bad ever happens over coffee, right? We matched on Hinge a week earlier and she came off relaxed. Her profile wasn't flashy. No long speeches, no warnings, just photos that looked like they were taken by friends instead of a ring light. She joked about work being chaotic and said she liked keeping things simple. That should have been my first clue, but at the time it felt comforting. The place she picked was a cafe across the street from a tall glass building with a logo I recognized but couldn't place. Lots of people in lanyards going in and out, the sound of traffic mixing with espresso machines. I got there early and stood outside pretending to scroll while actually watching the entrance. When she walked up, she smiled like she already knew me. Not in a creepy way, just overly familiar for someone I had only texted with. We ordered drinks and sat at a small table near the window. She talked fast, mostly about work. Deadlines, meetings, coworkers who took things too seriously. I nodded and tried to keep up. Every now and then she checked her phone, but not like she was distracted. More like she was waiting for something specific. I brushed it off. First dates are awkward. People get nervous. About 20 minutes in, she asked me questions that felt out of place for how early it was. Not deep emotional stuff, but logistical things. My full name. Where I live. Whether I had a stable schedule. If I had any medical issues she should know about. She laughed after asking that last one like it was a joke, but it didn't land. I told myself she was just anxious. Some people overshare. Some people overask. Then everything snapped sideways. A man in a blazer walked up to our table. He didn't look confused or apologetic like someone interrupting a date. He looked purposeful. Like this was part of his route. He glanced at her first, then at me, then back at her. His expression wasn't angry. It was concerned in a professional way that made my chest tighten. He started talking to her, then to me without lowering his voice. People nearby could hear. I remember the exact moment my stomach dropped because he said my name. My full name. Not a guess. Not a question. Like it was already known. He asked why I was listed as her emergency contact in the company system. Not in a joking way. In a way that assumed there was a reasonable explanation. Then he mentioned HR. He said something about relationship disclosure already being approved. Like paperwork had happened. Like decisions had been made. I just sat there, frozen, my hands wrapped around my cup. My brain was trying to process how my name could possibly be anywhere in her workplace. I had never been inside that building. I didn't even know where she worked until that moment. I looked at her, waiting for her to explain, to laugh, to say this was a mistake. She didn't look shocked. She looked annoyed. Not at him, but at the situation. Like something had gone off script. The man waited. People were staring now. I could feel heat creeping up my neck. I shook my head slightly, trying to signal that I had no idea what he was talking about. He noticed. His expression shifted. Confusion layered over concern. He asked again, slower this time, why I was listed as her emergency contact. He said HR flagged it because it didn't match prior records. He said they had already approved the relationship disclosure based on her submission. Submission. Like a form. Like a checkbox. My ears were ringing. I could barely hear the rest. She finally said something to him, low and quick. He frowned. He looked at me again, really looked at me this time like he was recalculating. Then he said they would talk later and walked back toward the building. The silence after was unbearable. The cafe noise rushed back in like nothing had happened. I stared at her. She took a sip of her drink like she needed a second. Then she explained. Not apologetically. Not urgently. She said her company required emergency contacts on file. She said she didn't have family nearby and didn't trust coworkers with that kind of responsibility. She said we were dating now, so it made sense. She said HR required disclosure if there was a personal relationship connected to emergency contacts, so she filled out the form. She said it was easier to do it early than later. I felt like I was outside my body. Dating now. Easier to do it early. My name in a system I didn't consent to. I asked how long I had been listed. She said a few days. I asked how she got my full name. She said it was on my profile. It wasn't. Not my full name. I asked how she knew where I live. She smiled and said people share more than they think. I pushed my chair back. My legs felt weak. I told her this wasn't okay. She looked genuinely confused by that. She said it was just admin. She said it didn't mean anything serious unless we wanted it to. She said if something happened to her, it was good that someone would be notified. That word echoed in my head. Something happened. I realized then how much she had already planned. The location, the timing, the forms. This wasn't a date to see if we clicked. This was a step in a process I didn't know I was in. I was already a line item. I stood up. I didn't care who was watching anymore. I told her to remove my name immediately. She said she would, but her tone made it sound inconvenient, like canceling a subscription. I left without finishing my drink. Outside, the building felt taller than before. The glass reflected everything. I checked my phone and saw a missed call from an unknown number. Then an email notification popped up. Subject line about emergency contact confirmation. My hands started shaking. I didn't open it. I blocked the number. I walked until my legs hurt. Later that night, I read through Hinge messages I had glossed over before. Little things that fell off now. Questions that lined up with forms. Jokes that weren't jokes. I reported the profile. I sent an email to the company address I found online explaining that I had never consented to being listed as anything. They replied 2 days later saying it had been corrected. She tried to message me again. Said there was a misunderstanding. Said she moved fast because she knew what she wanted. I blocked her everywhere. Sometimes I still think about how easy it was for her to put my name on a document and make it real. How close I was to being tied to a stranger in ways that mattered. I pass that building sometimes and feel my phone vibrate even when it doesn't. Like some part of me is still on file.
I knew this date was going to be weird before I even left my live, but not for any logical reason. It was just one of those days where Hinge felt like a bad idea and I ignored that feeling on purpose. I had already put on shoes, already told my friend where I was going, already committed in that lazy way where backing out feels worse than whatever might happen. His profile wasn't bad. Not amazing either. Kind of forgettable in a safe way. He joked about being awkward. I thought that meant he would spill a drink or talk too fast. I didn't think it meant what it actually meant. We were supposed to meet at a small bubble tea place near a strip of stores that always smelled like fried food and cleaning spray. The place had plastic chairs, the kind that feel like they might crack if you sit wrong, and bright lights that make everyone look a little sick. I got there first and sat down, scrolling without actually reading anything. I remember thinking how public it was and how that usually makes dates feel safer. That thought did not age well. He walked in looking more nervous than I expected. Not shaking or anything dramatic, just stiff. Shoulders high. Eyes darting like he was counting exits. He smiled too hard. I told myself to relax. Nerves are normal. I get nervous too. We ordered drinks and sat across from each other at one of those tiny tables where your knees almost touch even if you don't want them to. The first few minutes were rough but manageable. He talked about work in a rushed way, like he was trying to dump everything out before forgetting it. He laughed at his own jokes a second too late. I nodded a lot. I asked questions to fill space. The chair creaked every time he shifted, which was often. I noticed he kept pressing his legs together and bouncing his foot. I figured he just had to use the bathroom and was trying to wait. Then it happened. He stood up suddenly. Not smoothly. It was abrupt, like his body decided before his brain did. The chair scraped loud against the floor and everyone looked over. He froze halfway up, face going pale, then darker, then something else entirely. There was a smell. Not immediate, but fast. Heavy. Wrong. My brain tried to label it as something else at first, like spilled tea or trash. Then it caught up. He sat back down. I didn't know what to do. I don't think anyone knows what to do in that situation. My body went cold and hot at the same time. The smell got worse as seconds passed. He leaned forward slightly, shoulders hunched, eyes locked on the table like it might save him. His hands were shaking. I could see that clearly now. He leaned closer to me, way too close, and said something under his breath. I didn't need to hear every word to understand. He was asking me not to leave. He was explaining that this was already the worst date he had this week. Not his life. His week. Like this was part of a series. My brain felt like it short-circuited. Worst date this week meant this had happened before. Maybe not exactly like this, but close enough. I felt a mix of horror and this awful, unwanted pity. He wasn't laughing. This wasn't a prank. This was someone fully unraveling in front of me. People around us started noticing. A couple at the next table whispered and moved their chairs slightly away. Someone near the counter wrinkled their nose. The employee behind the register looked confused, then concerned. No one said anything out loud, but the energy shifted. It was like a silent alarm went off. He stayed seated. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't stand up again. He just kept repeating himself quietly, telling me not to go, saying he couldn't handle another one going wrong. His eyes were glossy. He looked trapped inside his own body. I sat there longer than I should have. I don't know why. Maybe shock. Maybe the fear of making it worse. Maybe the weird pressure of being asked not to leave in a moment where leaving felt like the only sane option. I kept thinking if I stood up, everyone would look at me. Like I would be the bad person abandoning him. My legs felt glued to the floor. The smell was unbearable now. It clung to the air. My drink sat untouched, ice melting slowly. I felt tears sting my eyes, not because I was sad exactly, but because my nervous system was overloaded. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I wanted to disappear. Finally, the employee came over. She asked if everything was okay. Her voice was careful. Trained. He nodded too fast. I shook my head before I could stop myself. She looked between us, then down at the floor, then back up. She asked him to step outside with her. He didn't move. He looked at me again. His face crumpled in this raw, humiliating way. He said something else quietly. Something about how it wasn't his fault. About anxiety. About doctors. About how he tried to time things right. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up. The chair made the same scraping noise, loud and final. Everyone looked. I didn't look at him. I grabbed my bag and walked straight out. The air outside hit me like a wall. I bent over and gagged, hands on my knees. I stood there shaking, trying to breathe normally, trying to convince myself that was real and it just happened. I walked down the strip without a plan. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. I kept walking until the sounds of the bubble tea place faded. I sat on a curb near a closed nail salon and stared at nothing. My hands smelled like soap from earlier, but my brain kept replaying the smell from inside. It felt stuck in my nose. After a while, I checked my phone. There were messages from him. A lot of them. Long ones. Apologies mixed with explanations. Mentions of medical issues. Mentions of other dates that went bad in different ways. One message said he really needed someone to stay. I didn't reply. I blocked him. I felt awful and relieved at the same time. Later that night, I threw my clothes straight into the wash even though nothing had touched me. I showered longer than usual. I sat on my bed wrapped in a towel, staring at the wall. I kept thinking about the phrase worst date this week. How many times had he gone through this? How many people had frozen the way I did? I deleted Hinge for a bit after that. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Every time I saw a plastic chair after that, my stomach tightened. Even now, sometimes when a date shifts in their seat too much, my body reacts before my brain does. like it's bracing for something it can't unsee.
I should have trusted the first weird feeling, the one that hit before I even met her. It wasn't fear exactly, more like that slow discomfort you get when someone already seems too familiar. We had only been messaging for a few days, but she kept bringing things up that felt ahead of schedule. Not emotional stuff, just details. Like she knew the shape of my life before I ever sat across from her. I brushed it off because Hinge is like that sometimes and I didn't want to sound paranoid. We met at a small wine bar tucked behind a grocery store, the kind of place that pretends it's hidden even though everyone knows it's there. Dim lights, scratched wooden tables, music low enough that you have to lean in without meaning to. I showed up a little late because parking was bad and my head was already noisy. She was already seated, drink in front of her, scrolling calmly like she had nowhere else to be. She looked normal. That was the unsettling part later. Nothing about her screamed red flag. She smiled easily, dressed casual, posture relaxed. If I passed her on the street, I would not remember her face 10 minutes later. We ordered another round and settled in. I told myself to relax. The first sign something was off came when she mentioned my childhood. Not in a vague way like asking where I grew up, but specific. She referenced a move I hadn't mentioned. She talked about a time period I usually avoid bringing up. I paused, laughed it off, assumed I had overshared in text and forgotten. That happens. Then she brought up my finances. Not my job, but money habits. She mentioned a rough year. She mentioned debt. Not numbers, but the tone was there, like she knew there had been a dip and a recovery. My stomach tightened. I am careful about what I share. I don't put that stuff online. I asked how she knew. She shrugged it off, said people can tell. As the night went on, it got worse. She referenced an ex by role, not name, but clearly. Talked about the timing of that breakup like it was common knowledge. She mentioned patterns. Mistakes. She talked like someone who had already done the post-date analysis before the date even started. I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain without sounding dramatic. I kept scanning my memory, trying to figure out what I had posted, what I had said, what mutual connections we might have. Nothing added up. I asked again how she knew so much. She smiled and said she was thorough. That word stuck with me. The wine sat heavy in my stomach. The bar felt smaller. I noticed how she watched my reactions closely, how her eyes lingered when she said something that landed too hard. Like she was checking a box. Every time I tried to steer the conversation to something lighter, she circled back. Childhood. Finance. Always back to those. Finally, she told me. Not all at once, but enough. She had Googled my name. Not just casually. She had gone deep. Pages in. She found a court document. Buried. Something I never talk about and never planned to talk about on a date. Something that doesn't show up unless you know how to look. My chest felt like it collapsed inward when she mentioned it, not by name but by details only someone who read it would know. She said she believed everyone had a story. She said documents never tell the full truth. She said she saw our date as a chance to hear my side. Not in a supportive way. More like an interview. Like I was a subject and she was gathering context. I couldn't speak for a moment. My mouth went dry. The sounds of the bar blurred together. I felt like I had been stripped in public without realizing it. That document was from years ago. It was messy and complicated and technically public but still deeply personal. The idea that she sat somewhere alone, scrolling through my past and deciding I owed her an explanation made my skin crawl. She leaned back, calm, waiting. Not pushing, not apologizing. Waiting. I asked why she didn't tell me before. She said people act differently when they know they are being evaluated. She said this way was more honest. She said she wanted to see how I carried myself before bringing it up. Like this was some controlled study and I had passed the first phase. I felt angry, but underneath that was something worse. Violation. My past had been pulled into the present without my consent and laid out between half-empty glasses like it was part of the menu. I thought about how many dates she had done this on. How many names she had typed into a search bar. How many lives she had quietly unfolded on her screen. I told her I wasn't comfortable talking about that. She nodded like she expected resistance. She said closure was important. She said avoidance creates patterns. She said she wasn't judging, she just wanted clarity. The worst part was how reasonable she sounded. Not kind. Not cruel. Clinical. Like this was all very normal behavior and I was the strange one for reacting. I realized then that this date had never been about getting to know me. It was about confirming what she already thought she knew. The questions were not curiosity. They were prompts. She wasn't listening for connection. She was listening for inconsistencies. I pushed my chair back slightly. The floor creaked. She noticed. Her eyes narrowed just a bit. I said I was leaving. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I just stood up. She looked surprised, not hurt, more like annoyed that the session was ending early. As I walked out, I felt lightheaded. The cool air outside hit me hard. I stood on the sidewalk for a while, breathing slowly, trying to ground myself. My phone buzzed with a notification from her before I even reached my car. I didn't open it. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me and I searched my own name again. I went deeper than I ever had. I found the same document. I imagined her reading it, line by line, forming opinions. I imagined her deciding I was interesting enough to meet based on that alone. The thought made my stomach twist. She messaged me again the next day. Long messages. Thoughtful tone. Said she felt a connection. Said she hoped I wouldn't shut down. Said she believed honesty was the foundation of anything real. I blocked her without replying. For a while after that, every time someone on Hinge asked a personal question, my chest tightened. I became hyper-aware of what was out there about me. What could be found. What someone could decide before ever meeting me. It felt like my past was no longer behind me, just waiting online for the wrong person to dig it up. I still think about that night sometimes. About how easily a date turned into an interrogation without me realizing it until it was too late. About how normal she seemed. How calm. How convinced she was that she deserved answers. Somewhere out there, she is probably still searching names, still deciding who is worth hearing out. I just hope the next person realizes sooner than I did.
I knew something was off before I even left my live, but I couldn't explain it without sounding dramatic. It was just this low buzzing feeling, like my brain was trying to warn me while my hands were already grabbing my keys. His profile looked fine. Normal job, normal photos, nothing flashy. He talked about connections a lot, which I thought just meant he was career-focused. He kept saying Hinge wasn't just for dating, it was for meeting people who added value. I rolled my eyes at that but still agreed to meet because I was tired of saying no. We picked a mid-range restaurant downtown, one of those places that tries to be fancy but still serves burgers. Lots of dark wood, low lighting, music just loud enough to make you lean in. I got there a little early and sat at the bar, scrolling without really seeing anything. I remember thinking how adult the place felt, like something people chose on purpose. Not casual. Intentional. He arrived a few minutes later and greeted me like we were already familiar. Not creepy, just confident. He talked a lot right away, about work, about clients, about meetings that ran long. I nodded along, letting him set the pace. He ordered for himself without asking the server questions, like he came here often. Everything felt rehearsed, but I couldn't tell if that was a red flag or just his personality. We sat at a small table near the center of the room. The candle between us flickered every time someone walked by. He leaned forward when he talked, like he wanted to make sure I was listening. He asked about my job but framed every question around opportunity. Who I knew, what rooms I had been in, what my next move was. It didn't feel flirty, but it wasn't unfriendly either. It felt like a meeting disguised as a date. Halfway through, he mentioned how valuable one-on-one conversations were. How much he learned from people when things were informal. He said sometimes the best connections happened outside the office. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was more focused on the food and the way the room hummed with quiet conversations. Then it happened so suddenly that it felt unreal. A woman walked up to our table holding a stack of papers. Not folded, not tucked away. Just held out in front of her like proof. She looked calm but tight, like everything in her body was being held together by effort. She didn't look at me at first. She looked at him. The restaurant noise dipped in my head. I couldn't hear what anyone else was saying, but I could see everything. The way his face drained of color. The way his shoulders stiffened. The way he froze like a kid caught doing something stupid, not dangerous. She turned the papers slightly and I saw them. Printed screenshots. Hinge messages. Our messages. My photos at the top. His words underneath. Everything laid out in black and white like evidence in a folder. People nearby started noticing. Heads turned. Forks paused mid-air. The server slowed as she passed, eyes darting. The woman finally looked at me. Her expression wasn't angry. It was tired. Like she had already cried somewhere else and this was the last step. He said something then. Not to her, to me. He tried to explain. He said he told her it was networking. Like that phrase could stretch far enough to cover this moment. Like calling it something else would make it acceptable. I sat there completely still. My hands were in my lap, fingers locked together. I felt heat rush to my face, then drain away. I didn't know where to look. At the papers. At her. At him. I felt like I had walked into a scene already in progress and didn't know my lines. She spoke again, still calm, still controlled. She held the screenshots closer to him. She had highlighted parts. I could see yellow marks from where I Saturday parts of our conversation that were clearly not about work. Not about connections. Not about value. Just two people meeting on a dating app. He didn't deny it. That was the worst part. He just reframed it. Kept using words like misunderstood and intent. Said he was building relationships. Said he never meant for it to cross a line. Said Hinge was just a tool. The word wife finally landed in my brain. Not because she said it, but because of the way she stood. The way she looked at him like she knew all his patterns. This wasn't a girlfriend. This wasn't a new partner. This was someone who had built a live with him and just watched it crack open in public. I felt sick. Not just embarrassed, but implicated. Like I had been pulled into something ugly without knowing. I wanted to apologize to her, but I didn't know how without making it worse. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up under the table. She asked me how long we had been talking. I answered quietly. My voice sounded far away to my own ears. She nodded like that confirmed something she already suspected. She thanked me for being honest. That made it worse somehow. He kept trying to control the situation. Kept standing and sitting back down like he couldn't decide what position would fix this. He talked too much. Every sentence dug him deeper. He kept glancing at me like he wanted backup, like I would help sell the story that this was all professional. I didn't. I couldn't. The manager appeared at some point. Asked if everything was okay. No one answered right away. The woman finally said they were leaving. She gathered the screenshots, neat and careful, like she would need them again. She looked at me one last time and gave a small nod. Not friendly. Not hostile. Just acknowledgement. He followed her toward the door, still talking, still explaining. She didn't slow down. The door closed behind them and the room exhaled all at once. Conversations resumed, louder than before, like people needed to prove they hadn't just watched something awful. I sat there alone. My food was untouched. The candle had burned low. My phone buzzed on the table, but I didn't check it. I stared at the empty chair across from me, trying to process what just happened. I felt exposed, like everyone in the room knew I had been part of it. The server came back and asked if I wanted a box. Her voice was gentle in that customer service way that pretends nothing happened. I shook my head. I asked for the check. She hesitated, then said it had already been taken care of. That almost made me laugh. Almost. I left the restaurant in a daze. The night air felt cooler than it should have. I walked a few blocks before stopping, just to breathe. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. Messages from him. Long ones. Apologies mixed with excuses. Explanations about stress. About misunderstandings. About how his marriage was complicated. I blocked him. Later that night, I read through our old messages with new eyes. The way he deflected personal questions. The way he kept things just vague enough. The way he always steered things back to work language. It all clicked into place too late. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the screenshots in her hands. The yellow highlights. My own words staring back at me like they belonged to someone else. I kept thinking about how calm she was. How prepared. How long she must have known before walking in. The next day, I deleted Hinge again. Not out of drama, just exhaustion. I felt dirty, like I had been used as part of someone else's lie. Even though I did nothing wrong, it sat heavy. Sometimes I wonder how he explained it after. If he stuck to the networking story. If he believed it himself. I don't wonder about her. I hope she went somewhere quiet. I hope she slept. As for me, I can't walk past that restaurant without my chest tightening.
The scariest part wasn't the post itself. It was the delay. The space between when she smiled into my phone and when I saw my own face staring back at me from a place it never should have been. That's what keeps replaying. That gap where I thought everything was normal. I matched with her during a slow week when Hinge felt more like background noise than hope. Her profile was polished but not flashy. Clean photos, office casual clothes, captions that sounded like someone who knew how to talk in meetings. She joked about balancing ambition and real life, which felt relatable in a tired way. Nothing about her screamed trouble. If anything, she seemed safe. Professional safe. I know now that should have been a warning. We agreed to meet at a rooftop bar above a parking garage downtown. The kind of place with string lights and fake plants and views that look better in photos than in real life. I showed up early and leaned against the railing watching traffic crawl below. I remember thinking how exposed it felt up there, like being on display. I brushed it off. First date nerves. She arrived right on time, phone already in hand, smiling like she was mid-thought. She was easy to talk to at first. Asked about my job, my plans, what I wanted next. I answered without thinking too much. She nodded a lot, eyes focused like she was taking mental notes. She talked about her career path, her network, how important connections were. Not in a braggy way, just matter of fact. The drinks were overpriced but good. I remember thinking they were probably like $18 each, the kind of place that charges for the view. We sat on tall stools near the edge, wind tugging at our clothes. She asked about my background, my goals, my timeline. Everything felt very present tense and future tense at the same time. About halfway through, she suggested we take a selfie. She said it casually like it was obvious. Said it was for memories. I hesitated for a second. I don't love photos, especially on first dates, but it didn't feel threatening. People do that now. Document everything. She leaned in before I could overthink it, held her phone up, angled it just right. I smiled because that's what you do. The city lights blurred behind us. She looked at the photo, nodded, said it was cute. Then she put her phone away. That was it. The moment passed. The rest of the date was fine. Not amazing, not terrible. We talked about work more than anything else. She kept steering it there. Asking about promotions, relocations, what I wanted to be known for. It felt less like flirting and more like an interview, but I didn't mind. It was different. She seemed impressed by some things, thoughtful about others. When we said goodbye, it was friendly. No promises. Just a maybe. I went home and didn't think about it much. I showered, threw on sweats, scrolled mindlessly. Later that night, I opened LinkedIn without really thinking. I use it more than I want to admit. It's muscle memory at this point. The post was near the top of my feed. It was the selfie. The exact one we took. Same angle. Same lights. My face clear and smiling, her slightly angled closer to the camera. The caption talked about meeting a great guy from Hinge and wishing him luck on his career journey. No name but enough context. Hashtags at the bottom. Networking vibes. Growth mindset energy. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The likes were already climbing. Comments too. people she worked with, people I didn't know. A few said things about love in the modern age. One joked about mixing business and pleasure. My face was just there. Public. Tagged with a story I did not agree to. I clicked her profile. Sure enough, it was her. Same photos. Same job title. She had a decent following. Not influencer level, but enough that this wasn't a private post lost in the void. This was intentional visibility. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt online before. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was loss of control. My image, my presence, my face had been turned into content without my permission. Not even content about us. Content about her brand. I messaged her immediately, asking her to take it down. I tried to keep it calm. Professional even. She replied fast. Said she didn't see the issue. Said it was positive. Said she didn't tag me or share my name. Said LinkedIn was about celebrating connections. Connections. She said the selfie was already public once we took it. That one sentence made my hands shake. Public to who? To her camera roll. To her followers. To whoever scrolled past and saw me framed as part of her narrative. I asked again. Firmer this time. She said she would consider it. That word again. Consider. I went back to the post. More likes. More comments. Someone had reshared it. My face was now in someone else's feed, completely detached from me. I tried to report it, but there was nothing technically wrong. No harassment. No fake info. Just my image, legally hers because she took the photo. That realization hit hard. How easy it was. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blue and white LinkedIn layout. My smile frozen. I imagined coworkers seeing it. Recruiters. People I hadn't talked to in years. I imagined them wondering why I was part of some motivational caption. The next morning it was still up. I messaged her again. No response. I refreshed. More engagement. Someone commented asking if we were collaborating. She replied with a vague line about always being open to new opportunities. I felt sick. I finally commented myself. Not angry. Just factual. Said I was uncomfortable with the photo being shared and asked her to remove it. Within minutes the comment was gone. Deleted. The post stayed. She messaged me after that. Said she felt blindsided. Said I was overreacting. Said the post reflected well on me. Said in her world visibility was a gift. I blocked her. A few hours later the post disappeared. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. But it didn't matter. Screenshots exist. Reshares exist. My face had already been part of a story I didn't consent to. 4 days after, I felt paranoid online. Every platform felt unsafe. Like my image could be lifted and repurposed at any moment. I changed my profile photos. Tightened privacy settings. I stopped smiling in pictures. The weirdest part was how normal she thought it was. How natural it seemed to her to turn a date into a post. To turn a person into a symbol. She didn't see harm because she saw value. I still think about that moment when she held up her phone and said it was for memories. How easily I agreed. How small that decision felt at the time. How big it became. Now, anytime someone suggests a photo early on, my chest tightens. I think about feeds and captions and audiences I never agreed to perform for. I think about how thin the line is between personal and public now. How fast it disappears.
The first thing I saw when I woke up was my work email, and that already felt wrong. I usually don't check it before brushing my teeth or even opening my eyes all the way, but my phone buzzed in that specific way that means something official. Not urgent exactly, just heavy. I remember thinking it was probably a calendar thing or a reminder I forgot about. I was still half asleep when I opened it. The subject line had my name in it. It was from HR. That alone was enough to jolt me fully awake. My heart started going faster before I even read the body of the email. I sat up in bed, blanket sliding down, phone glowing too bright in the dark room. The message was polite in that corporate way that pretends nothing is wrong while clearly signaling something is. They said they had been contacted by an individual who claimed to have interacted with me in a personal capacity. They said screenshots were attached. They said they needed clarification. I read it 3 times before it fully landed. A stranger had emailed my job. Not a coworker. Not a client. A Hinge date. He had sent them screenshots of my Hinge profile and messages. He claimed I emotionally exploited him during an intentional dating process. Those were the words HR used, which meant those were the words he used. Intentional dating. Emotional exploitation. Like this was a workplace violation instead of a bad date. I felt sick. I dropped my phone on the bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. My room looked the same as it always did, but everything felt off. Like something had leaked into a space it should never reach. My personal life had crossed a line and walked straight into my professional one without asking. This all started the night before. We had matched earlier that week. His profile was heavy on intention and communication. Lots of talk about emotional intelligence, growth, not wasting time. I had rolled my eyes a little but still swiped. Sometimes those guys are just trying to sound mature. Sometimes they are fine. The date itself wasn't dramatic. We met at a casual place near a park, outdoor seating, people walking dogs and jogging past. It was early evening. Safe. Normal. He talked a lot about his feelings. Not in a vulnerable way, more like a rehearsed way. He referenced past relationships constantly, framing everything as lessons learned. I listened, nodded, shared a little but not much. Something felt off, but nothing I could point to clearly. By the end of it, I knew I wasn't interested. There was no spark, no comfort. Just a sense that he was trying to move too fast emotionally, like he wanted validation more than connection. When I got home, I unmatched him. I didn't send a message explaining. I didn't think I owed one after a single date. I figured that was that. Apparently, it was not. Back in my bed, staring at the HR email, I felt my chest tighten. My first instinct was panic. Had he lied about me? Had he exaggerated? What exactly had he sent? I opened the attachment with shaking hands. Screenshots of my Hinge profile. My photos. My prompts. Screenshots of our chat, selectively cropped. Messages taken out of order. My polite replies framed as leading him on. My decision to unmatch framed as abandonment. His email attached below, long and dramatic, talking about how he felt misled, how he believed we were engaged in an intentional process, how my withdrawal caused distress. He used words like unsafe and harm. He framed himself as a victim. He had found my workplace somehow. My company name wasn't on my Hinge profile. My title wasn't either. He must have searched my name, cross-referenced, Doug. The effort alone made my skin crawl. HR ended their email by asking if I could provide context and confirm whether I knew this individual. They said they took all concerns seriously. I sat there shaking, not from fear of getting fired exactly, but from the violation. The audacity. The way he had escalated a personal rejection into a professional accusation. The way he tried to use my job as leverage. I didn't reply right away. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I paced my live, phone in hand, replaying the date in my head. Every moment where I had smiled politely. Every time I had listened. Wondering how he twisted it into exploitation. I emailed HR back later that morning. I kept it factual. I said I had met him once through a dating app. I said I did not pursue further contact. I said his claims were false. I said I did not consent to my personal dating profile being shared with my employer. I attached my own screenshots, full context, timestamps included. They replied saying thank you and that they would review. The waiting was awful. I went to work that day like normal, but everything felt different. Every notification made my stomach drop. Every meeting felt like I was being watched, even though nothing had changed. My manager didn't say anything. No one treated me differently. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my name was floating in some invisible thread. That afternoon, HR asked for a call. I closed my office door and sat down, hands folded in my lap like I was in trouble even though I had done nothing wrong. They asked me to walk through what happened. I told them the truth. I told them about the date, the unmatching, the email. They listened quietly. They asked clarifying questions. Neutral ones. They told me this was not the first time something like this had happened. Not with him specifically, but the pattern. Someone using workplace channels to escalate personal grievances. They said they would handle it. After the call, I felt drained. Not relieved. Just empty. Later that evening, I checked my personal email. There was a message from him. Long. Unhinged. Accusing me of ruining his life. Saying HR had dismissed his concerns. Saying I lacked accountability. He said he hoped I learned from this. Like he was teaching me a lesson. I blocked him everywhere. For days after, I felt exposed. Like my live and my job were no longer separate. Like anyone could reach into my professional world if they wanted to hurt me enough. I changed my LinkedIn privacy. I removed details. I locked things down. HR followed up a week later saying the matter was closed. They said no action was taken against me. They advised me to document everything and let them know if there was further contact. I thanked them and tried to move on. But something shifted after that. I stopped feeling safe unmatching people without explanation. I started overthinking every message. Every date felt heavier, like it carried potential consequences beyond just awkwardness. Hinge stopped feeling casual. It felt risky. What stuck with me most was how he framed it. Emotionally exploited. Intentional dating process. He turned his expectations into obligations and my boundaries into offenses. He tried to rewrite reality using corporate language, hoping it would stick. Sometimes I wonder if he does this every time someone walks away. If he keeps a folder. If he believes his own narrative. I don't know. All I know is that one bad date followed me into my inbox, my job, my sense of safety. And even though it ended cleanly on paper, it didn't feel clean in my body. It felt like something that couldn't be unseen.